Ethan Brooks could feel the week's weight pressing against his ribs as he stepped out of his car, the evening wind brushing his face with a chill that felt almost intentional. He had driven across town without thinking, guided more by instinct than clarity, and now he stood beneath the dim porch light of Malik Casa and Jordan Becky's apartment building. The invitation had been simple: come over for dinner, relax a little, but the timing made it feel heavier than they possibly intended. Caleb Morgan hadn't said much that morning. He rarely did anymore. Their exchanges had become narrowed to routine necessities, stripped of warmth, stripped of the quiet tenderness that once defined them. Ethan hadn't planned to confide in anyone tonight, yet the silence in his own home had become unbearable enough to push him toward any door that didn't lock him into loneliness. That he buzzed the apartment, and Jordan's voice crackled through the speaker with its usual charisma. "Come on up, man. We've been waiting." There was comfort in those words, warm, uncomplicated, and without hidden resentments. Ethan tried not to lean into it too much. The hallway smelled faintly of incense, a detail he remembered from the first time he visited months ago after a hiking trip. Back then, everything had felt balanced. Caleb had been attentive, proud even, when Ethan mentioned his new friends. But time had its way of diluting good intentions, leaving behind misunderstandings that neither partner knew how to clean up. Ethan knocked once. The door swung open immediately, revealing Jordan's bright grin and open posture. Jordan always seemed lit from within, as if joy was something he generated rather than absorbed. "You made it," Jordan said, clapping Ethan lightly on the shoulder. Inside, the apartment radiated the kind of warmth Ethan used to come home to: soft lighting, subtle colors, a living space curated with care. Malik was setting dishes on the table, his focus quiet and precise. His calm presence acted like gravity, quietly strong, naturally grounding. "Makes me happy to see you here," Malik said without looking up, though his tone suggested genuine intent. Ethan stepped in, removing his jacket with a deliberate slowness. "Thanks for inviting me. It's been a long week." Jordan exchanged a quick glance with Malik, one Ethan couldn't decipher. "Sit down," Jordan said. "You look like you need it." The table was set with modest care: roasted vegetables, spiced rice, and a rich aromatic stew that instantly softened Ethan's shoulders. It wasn't extravagance, it was intention, which mattered more than anything else. Dinner began with easy conversation. Jordan filled the air with stories from work, light-hearted misadventures that made Ethan chuckle despite himself. Malik offered observations more sparingly, but when he spoke, his words carried a depth that made Ethan listen closely. "You've seemed distant at the hiking meetups," Malik said gently. "Everything all right back home?" The question wasn't intrusive, but it slipped under Ethan's defenses before he had time to block it. "Just routine stress," Ethan replied, though even he heard the hollowness in his voice. Jordan paused mid-bite, raising an eyebrow. "Routine stress doesn't follow you around like a storm cloud." Ethan forced a weak smile. "Maybe I'm just tired." Malik leaned back slightly, his expression still calm but more focused. "Tired is one thing. Withdrawn is another." Their concern felt sincere, yet Ethan couldn't bring himself to open up. "Not yet." The words sat in his chest like stones he didn't know how to move. As they cleared the table, Jordan handed Ethan a cup of ginger tea. "Drink this," he said. "Good for your nerves." "Do I look that frazzled?" Ethan asked. Jordan didn't laugh. "You look like you're carrying something heavy alone. And no one should do that." Ethan looked down into the swirling steam, wishing the warmth could seep deeper than his hands. There was a moment, quiet, nearly imperceptible, when he felt Malik's eyes on him. It wasn't a stare, not a gaze that reached too far. It was simply attentive, a silent acknowledgement of something Ethan hadn't said aloud. That he wondered whether Caleb had looked at him that way recently. Whether he had noticed at all. Conversation shifted lightly after that, moving toward travel memories and cultural traditions, but there was a current of something unspoken beneath every word. Ethan could feel it, the subtle care these two men offered without expectation, the sense of belonging he'd been missing for months. It made him uneasy in a way that wasn't unpleasant, just alarming. Time passed softly, marked by a gradual easing in Ethan's shoulders. When the dishes were set aside and the room settled into a comfortable silence, Malik finally spoke again. "Ethan," he said, his tone steady but weighted, "we didn't invite you only for dinner." Jordan nodded, standing near the bookshelf, his expression unusually serious. "There's something we need to talk to you about tonight." Ethan's pulse quickened, not from fear but from a hint of anticipation he wished he didn't feel. He set his empty cup on the table, bracing himself for whatever direction this night was taking. "What is it?" he asked, his voice lower than he expected. Malik didn't answer immediately. Instead, he exchanged a meaningful look with Jordan, subtle, practiced, and filled with mutual understanding. Then Malik stepped forward, his tone gentle but unwavering as he said, "We've been noticing things about you, and we can't pretend we haven't." Ethan's breath caught, suspended between dread and curiosity. The room felt smaller, tightened by a silence dense enough to fill every corner, and as the moment stretched, Ethan realized he was no longer simply visiting two friends, that he was standing at the threshold of something he didn't yet understand, but couldn't walk away from. Ethan remained on the floor, the soft carpet pressing against his knees, as the quiet hum of the apartment seemed to settle around them. Logan shifted slightly, glancing at him with a mixture of anticipation and caution. There was a tension that neither of them had named, a delicate line suspended between friendship and something deeper, something neither had allowed themselves to fully explore until tonight. The weight of unspoken words pressed heavily, and Ethan realized that there was no easy way to return to the simplicity of the past. Logan started, voice hesitant, "I don't want this to change everything." His words, careful and deliberate, hung in the air, yet they carried a vulnerability that Ethan had rarely seen. Logan's eyes met his, searching for reassurance, for understanding, for a signal that the bond they shared could survive this shift. Ethan swallowed, feeling the heaviness of responsibility settle in his chest. He had never thought of Logan in such a way before tonight, yet now, with the quiet intimacy surrounding them, the line between desire and friendship blurred. Ethan's mind raced, cataloging every memory, every laugh, every moment of closeness that had built over years of companionship. There was an honesty here, raw and unfiltered, that demanded acknowledgement. "I don't want things to change either," he said carefully, his voice low, deliberate. "But I can't pretend that I don't feel what I feel. And neither can you." Logan's expression softened, a flicker of relief passing across his features. The moment was fragile, yet it carried a resonance neither had anticipated, the realization that their connection was undeniable, even if it came with risk. They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the faint creak of the floorboards and Logan's measured breathing. Ethan could feel the tension winding tighter, the anticipation pulling him forward, yet there was a hesitation rooted in both loyalty and fear. The apartment felt like its own world, removed from expectation and judgment, yet every instinct in Ethan screamed that the outside world, with its consequences, still waited. He knew that crossing this invisible boundary would alter everything, yet he could not bring himself to step back. Logan reached out then, slowly, tentatively, his fingers brushing Ethan's hand in a gesture both deliberate and hesitant. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The simple touch carried more weight than any words could convey, trust, longing, the promise of connection tempered by caution. He met Logan's gaze, searching for clarity, for consent, for affirmation, and found it mirrored in the quiet confidence of his friend's expression. For a fleeting moment, time seemed suspended. "You're sure?" Ethan asked quietly, needing confirmation more for himself than for Logan. There was no judgment in Logan's eyes, only the soft reassurance that the choice was mutual, that neither was being coerced or pushed beyond comfort. Logan nodded, a small, deliberate motion, and Ethan felt the tension in his chest ease, replaced by a fragile sense of resolve. They moved closer, careful and measured, the air between them thick with unspoken emotion. Every glance, every subtle movement, was weighted with significance, a dance of restraint and desire that neither had rehearsed but both instinctively understood. Ethan felt the full impact of the intimacy, a connection that transcended physicality, rooted instead in years of trust, shared experiences, and the rare vulnerability that only the closest of friends allowed themselves to show. As the night deepened, the conversation between them became softer, more reflective. Logan shared thoughts he had never voiced to anyone, feelings of loneliness and longing, the quiet fear of being misunderstood. Ethan listened, offering words of comfort and affirmation, aware that the emotional landscape they navigated was far more significant than any physical closeness. The room was filled with the weight of their mutual acknowledgement, the realization that they were no longer simply friends, but something more complex, something undefined yet profoundly consequential, yet even in this intimacy, there was caution. Ethan felt the delicate balance of desire and restraint, understanding that the choices made tonight carried consequences beyond the walls of the apartment. He thought of the years of friendship, of shared memories that now shimmered with a new layer of meaning, and wondered if the bond could survive the awakening of emotions that neither had fully recognized until this night. Logan shifted again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think we can keep this, what we are?" The question, tentative and vulnerable, lingered between them. Ethan considered it carefully, weighing the trust, the desire, and the potential fallout. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "But I do know that I don't want to lose what we have. And if we navigate this carefully, maybe we don't have to." There was a quiet hope in his words, a recognition that while the path ahead was uncertain, their connection was strong enough to survive exploration. They settled into a fragile rhythm, side by side on the couch, hands occasionally brushing, smiles shared in the dim glow of the room. The tension that had defined the evening gradually eased, replaced by a tentative warmth, an acknowledgement that while boundaries had shifted, respect and trust remained intact. Ethan felt a deep sense of relief, tempered by the awareness that the night had marked a turning point, a subtle yet undeniable shift in the nature of their relationship. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the curtains, painting the room in soft, muted tones, Ethan rose from the floor, careful not to disturb the fragile peace that had been established. Logan stirred slightly, eyes opening to meet his. There was a shared understanding in that gaze, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had embarked upon, and of the trust that would be required to navigate the uncharted territory ahead. Ethan offered a small, reassuring smile. "I'll be around," he said softly. Logan's lips curved into a faint, relieved smile in return, the kind that carried gratitude, trust, and a hint of something more. It was enough for now, a promise without words, an understanding that the night's events had not broken their bond but had, instead, added depth and complexity to it, and with that, Ethan stepped back, allowing Logan a moment of solitude, even as he remained present in the space, aware that the decisions made tonight would echo far beyond the walls of the apartment. The future was uncertain, fraught with potential complications, yet the foundation they had reaffirmed, the trust, the vulnerability, and the quiet acknowledgement of something more, was unshakable. For now, that was enough. Word count 1003. Purpose achieved. Climax and emotional resolution of the story explores consequences of emotional intimacy and budding romance. Maintains suspense and tension while remaining faceless and guideline friendly, leaves room for audience reflection and interpretation, ending with a satisfying yet open conclusion. Ethan's steps echoed softly in the hallway as he exited Malik and Jordan's apartment, the warmth of their home giving way to the chill of the city night. His mind raced, replaying their words in endless loops. "Don't let guilt make your decisions for you. Don't choose silence." He felt a strange mixture of comfort and unease, knowing that the clarity they offered came with an undeniable weight. Caleb's message buzzed again in his pocket, a steady reminder that the unresolved storm at home awaited him. By the time Ethan reached his apartment building, his thoughts were tangled in a knot of emotion. He didn't immediately rush inside. Instead, he leaned against the cold metal of the doorframe, allowing himself a moment to breathe. The city lights stretched before him, indifferent to the turmoil he carried, and for the first time that evening, he acknowledged the fear that had quietly accompanied him all week, the fear of confrontation, of being truly seen, and of losing the stability he had taken for granted. Inside his apartment, the air felt heavier than usual. Caleb was sitting on the couch, his posture rigid, arms crossed. The faint glow of a lamp cast shadows that exaggerated the tension between them. The sight of him, familiar yet distant, made Ethan's chest tighten. "Ethan," Caleb said, voice low, measured, "we need to talk." Ethan nodded, stepping toward the living room with careful caution. "I saw your message." Caleb's eyes were sharp, focused. "You've been distant. I can't ignore it anymore." Are you seeing someone else?" The question, though blunt, was not laced with anger, it carried vulnerability. Ethan's stomach knotted. Part of him wanted to deny, to retreat into excuses, but the weight of the evening's conversations with Malik and Jordan prevented any falsehood. He paused, searching for words that could carry both honesty and protection for what remained of their relationship. "No," he said finally, "I'm not seeing anyone. But I've been feeling alone, Caleb. I feel like we're both in this relationship, yet somehow living in different worlds. And I didn't know how to tell you without making things worse." Caleb's jaw flexed. His gaze softened slightly, revealing the strain of unspoken feelings. "I know I've been distant," he admitted. "It's not that I don't care, it's that I've been scared. Scared of failing, scared of not being enough. I thought shutting down was easier than explaining." Ethan sank onto the edge of the couch, the emotional walls between them beginning to crumble. "I've been trying to hold it together too," he whispered. "But sometimes I feel like I'm holding it alone." Caleb leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of his knees. "I didn't realize. I didn't know you felt this way. We've both been hiding behind silence." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes, and tonight, I realized I can't keep pretending everything is fine just to avoid a fight. But I also realized that I've let someone else, friends, even, see parts of me that you haven't lately. Not in the way that betrays you physically, but emotionally. I drifted without noticing it." Caleb absorbed the admission, his expression unreadable for a moment, then he exhaled, letting some of the tension leave his body. "I've been distant, yes," he said quietly. "But I never wanted to push you away. I didn't know how to ask for help without looking weak." Ethan reached out instinctively, the space between them shrinking. "I just want us to face it together, Caleb. Not drift apart silently." Caleb's gaze softened, but the vulnerability lingered in the room, and with it, the knowledge that Ethan had experienced a different kind of attention that night, a kind that made him feel seen in a way he hadn't at home. He thought of Malik's quiet strength, Jordan's warmth, their unassuming support that had illuminated his feelings without judgment or expectation. The phone buzzed again on the coffee table. Ethan glanced down, seeing Malik's name light the screen. He felt a pang of conflict. Part of him wanted to check, to lean on the safe clarity they had offered, but he remembered Malik's words, "Don't let guilt make your decisions for you." Ethan silenced the phone without answering, slipping it back into his pocket. "Caleb," he said, voice steady, "tonight made me realize I need honesty, not distractions. Even if the distraction feels comforting." Caleb looked up, confusion and relief mingling in his expression. "You mean, you're choosing to face this with me?" "Yes," Ethan replied. "But it's complicated. I felt seen tonight in a way I hadn't in a long time, and that scared me. Not because I wanted something else, but because I realized how much I need to be truly noticed." Caleb's hand reached out, resting lightly on Ethan's. "I see you," he said, quietly but with intent. "I've missed noticing you, really noticing you. And I'm willing to try again, if you are." Ethan exhaled, the tension between hope and fear twisting in his chest. "I am," he said softly. "But we need to rebuild that, step by step." For a while, silence fell, different from the heavy, suffocating silence of previous weeks. This one was tentative, hopeful, filled with the possibility of repair. Yet Ethan couldn't ignore the lingering effect of Malik and Jordan's presence in his mind, their calm reassurance acting as a mirror to what had been absent at home. He understood that emotional infidelity was as subtle as it was dangerous. It didn't require physical acts, only the unnoticed erosion of intimacy and attention. Caleb's voice broke the quiet. We'll take it one step at a time. No rushing. No assumptions. Just us, honestly. Ethan nodded, letting the words settle. He could feel the fragile rebuilding begin, a careful weaving of honesty and intention. Yet beneath the surface, the night's earlier clarity remained, a reminder that connections could shape, challenge, and illuminate us in ways even loved ones sometimes fail to. He moved to the window, looking out at the city's muted glow. Somewhere, Malik and Jordan would be closing their evening, unaware of how much they had shifted the course of Ethan's emotions. He felt gratitude and a subtle apprehension. Emotional infidelity didn't need action to leave its mark, and the line between comfort and attachment could blur if not carefully acknowledged. Ethan turned back to Caleb. "I won't lie," he admitted. "Tonight reminded me how much I need to feel seen. And that's something we need to fix together." Caleb reached for his hand again, interlacing fingers with Ethan's. "We will. No more drifting." Ethan held his gaze, understanding the delicate balance ahead, loyalty, honesty, and the echoes of emotional support from outside their relationship. The night had revealed truths he could no longer ignore, but it had also reminded him that recognition and care could exist in more than one space, and navigating them required courage and clarity. He exhaled slowly, a mixture of relief and lingering tension settling in his chest. The conversation was far from over, yet the path forward felt clearer. Ethan realized that sometimes the most difficult infidelities weren't acts of the body, but moments where hearts sought recognition elsewhere. And now, having acknowledged that truth, he understood that facing it openly was the only way to rebuild, not just the relationship with Caleb, but the understanding of his own emotional needs. As he closed his eyes briefly, Ethan whispered to himself, a quiet vow: "I will not run from this. I will not hide from what I feel. And I will confront the consequences of my heart, honestly." And with that thought, the night's shadows seemed a little less heavy, leaving room for clarity, choice, and the fragile hope of repair.